traditionally the CNN poll has been 8 points more Republican than the electorate has. I don't know what the case is tonight. They haven't shared their numbers as to what that party ID was going into this. That would be interesting, because if he won by 8 points in a sample that was 8 points more Republican than the electorate, then that would probably be a much more significant victory for the president. They have not shared the numbers with us yet. I'd be curious to see what they are. The country is 7%, generally 7% more Democratic in terms of self-identified
more Republicans watch the debates than the Democrats,
which is going to lead you to a skewed result, because the sample is significantly more Republican than the general election is. And even at that, 48-40 said the president won the debate. It is clear that he did. I don't know what we argued about. We can argue about his political effect.
I never argue with you.
And we'll know the answer to the political effect in 4 days.
I got to cut us off here and send us back to Anderson. He can figure out. I'm going to let you crunch the numbers, Anderson.
I'll get right on that during our commercial break. I should point out also for military history buffs, as I am, and James Carville's a former Marine, the Marines still do use bayonets, just in case you're interested. The Army, I think, discontinued them in 2010 as part of their basic training, but Marines still train with them in basic training and use them quite effectively, I should point out. Still ahead, the big question of the night: did the debate influence people's votes? We'll have more poll numbers on that, and we'll see what our focus group of uncommitted Florida voters thought were the candidates' best and worst moments tonight.
Let's look at how our focus group of undecided Florida voters responded to the candidates tonight. We measured their reaction as they listened to the president and Governor Romney. The green line represents men. The yellow line represents the women. Here is President Obama's best moment of the night, according to this focus group. It happened at around 9:15 p.m. Eastern. The candidates were discussing the war in Iraq and whether or not the United States right now has the right number of troops in the country. The U.S. has no troops left in the country after failing to reach a status of forces agreement with Iraq. There are a few Marines guarding the U.S. Embassy. That's it. Listen to the president talk about the status of the situation in Iraq.
The other thing that we have to do is recognize that we can't continue to do nation building in these regions. Part of American leadership is making sure that we're doing nation building here at home. That will help us maintain the kind of American leadership that we need.
That was the president's high point. Now let's take a look at Mitt Romney's best moment. He peaked at around 9:48 p.m. Eastern, more than halfway through the debate. Bob Schieffer, the moderator, asked the candidates if an attack on Israel would be considered an attack on the United States. Governor Romney said yes, and went on to explain how he would avoid that scenario altogether.
It's absolutely the right thing to do to have crippling sanctions. I'd have put them in place earlier, but it's good that we have them. Number two, something I would add today is I would tighten those sanctions. I would say that ships that carry Iranian oil can't come into our ports. I imagine the EU would agree with us as well. Not only ships couldn't, I'd say companies that are moving their oil can't, people who are trading in their oil can't. I would tighten those sanctions further.
That was Mitt Romney's highest point. Let's go to the focus group. Soledad O'Brien has been watching them, listening to them. Soledad.
You know, Ernie Hall, who's up here on the top, on the left side from where I am, said that he really felt that what Mitt Romney said about avoiding an attack upon Israel really resonated with him. Tell me why you thought that was a high moment for you.
Well, I felt like our support of Israel has been rather not clear over the past 4 years, and that Romney was very forceful in addressing his support of Israel.
In fact, we saw, Wolf, many times whenever the candidates got negative, we saw immediately the dial testers go down. Whenever they were speaking affirmatively and strongly, you could see that the dial testers for both men and women would go up. Wolf?
All right, so let's stand by. Let's take a look right now at the low points for the debate for both President Obama and Governor Romney. We'll begin with the president's low point. It came at around 9:54 p.m. Eastern after Governor Romney accused the president of being weak on foreign policy and taking a so-called apology tour across the Middle East. The president pushed back, and the focus group didn't appreciate his tone.
Nothing Governor Romney just said is true, starting with this notion of me apologizing. This has been probably the biggest whopper that's been told during the course of this campaign.
That was the president's lowest moment, according to this focus group in Orlando. Governor Romney's low point happened much earlier at 9:39 p.m. Eastern. The moderator, Bob Schieffer, asked Governor Romney where he would get the money to pay for a bigger military. Romney talked about cutting domestic spending programs. Women in particular did not like this answer.
Come on our website, you'll look at how we get to a balanced budget within 8 to 10 years. We do it by reducing spending in a whole series of programs. By the way, number one I get rid of is Obamacare. There are a number of things that sound good, but frankly, we just can't afford them. And that one doesn't sound good, and it's not affordable. So I get rid of that one from day one. To the extent humanly possible, we get that out. We take program after program that we don't absolutely have to have, and we get rid of them.
Let's go back to Soledad. Soledad, what'd you make of that?
In fact, Wolf, yeah, you know, we saw a very big gender gap this time around. I've been doing focus groups for a while for CNN, and this time around we saw a huge gender gap, especially when the questions were about education, about domestic spending, and also about that 9/11 story. Jennifer Jankowski is at the end down there. You were very moved when the president was talking about that girl who was 4 years old during 9/11, and she talked about how relieved she was when Osama bin Laden was killed. Tell me a little bit about why that was moving for you.
Well, I'm from the New York area, and I was actually the day of 9/11. Everybody started calling me because my father worked underneath the World Trade Center. So it brought back memories of me thinking, oh my God, my dad, what's going on with my dad? Because we had no idea of what was going on. So when he talked about that, it just brought back that memory. And now that my dad is no longer with us, he's looking down from us saying, okay, we got him. And that is a victory for us. So it just reminded me of, you know, what a blessing everything is still, and that we can still celebrate these people's lives that lost their lives for something that's totally unnecessary.
I know that tone was very important to the folks in the focus group. We could see it. We were watching the squiggles. And as soon as the tone got a little bit edgy, or even a lot sort of edgy, all of a sudden everyone would dial down. How important was tone for you, sir?
Well, substance is always more important, but I can understand how frustration can take over someone's point of view from time to time. When a jab is sitting there and they get a chance to throw it, they do. But when they do stick to substance, we learn more, and it makes us a better informed electorate.
There were some moments where people were laughing out loud. We saw when they tried to do the strong shift, talk about education and not really talk about foreign policy. Do those moments resonate with you? Is that important for you, or is that something that doesn't stick in terms of how you judge who won or lost?
No, it's important to me. I mean, you know, it gives me a different perspective on things, because nonverbal communication is just as important as verbal. So, yeah, it makes a difference in things.
All right, Wolf, and we'll send it back to you.
All right, very interesting stuff. Thanks, Soledad, very much. We'll get back to you. We're also standing by for the final numbers from our poll of debate watchers. You're going to find out if people's votes were influenced by what they heard tonight. Also, you'll be able to watch the debate again in its entirety. That's coming up later. We have the final results just in from our scientific poll of registered voters who actually watched tonight's debate. We gave you the headline a little while ago. 48% say President Obama won, compared to 40% who say Governor Romney won. Here's the question. Will that change any votes? Look at these new numbers just in. We asked, who did the debate make you more likely to vote for? 24% said President Obama. 25% said Governor Romney. 50% basically said neither. Anderson?
Just a sign of how divided things are at this point. I want to talk about that with our panelists in just a moment. But first, let's go back to Candy at the debate hall.
Thanks, Anderson. We've been sort of chewing over a couple of things that were surprising to us in the debate. And the first was that Mitt Romney had a clear shot at Libya and Benghazi. Who didn't give security when security had been so clearly asked for in the State Department cables, and he didn't take it? Why?
I was surprised. I thought he would, and I don't know if it's because there was intelligence information that he was briefed on that made him draw back, or if it was just his overall tone that he wanted to establish tonight was to be much more presidential, rise above, and not try to get into a tit for tat on every issue. But it sure did come as a surprise to me. I expected he would have made more of that issue.
And one of the things I think we're seeing in those last numbers, James, is that we might have reached the point of diminishing returns on these debates simply because 50% said it doesn't make any difference, and about even as to who did it make you more likely to vote for President Obama or for Mitt Romney. So what changes these poll numbers now?
Well, I'm not sure that they're going to change a whole lot. I think we're going into a pretty close election. I think the president's up a couple of points. Maybe he already disagrees. We can argue about that, but it's somewhere going to be close, and I suspect that nothing's going to, like, fundamentally change between now and Election Day. But if somebody gets a point or a point and a half in a race like this is going to be kind of enormous change. I mean, little things, you know, echo out the big things, and you know, and generally it's a kind of a change in mood, or people from one party tend to get a little more fired up about the way that the candidate did or didn't do. I think we're going to be interesting to see over the next 4 days what happens. No one believes it's going to be like a drastic change in the numbers, but little changes mean a lot.
Right. Well,
there's one big external event coming up.
And
right.
We've got the unemployment numbers coming up.
On Friday this week, we'll get the snapshot of how the economy grew. That could be big.
One of the things that we were talking about also was how often Israel came up.
Yeah, I got a tweet from a reporter at a newspaper, an Israeli paper, that said Israel was mentioned 34 times tonight. I think President Obama mentioned it 33.
Here in Florida.
He really wanted to make sure that he didn't have a problem with Israel, because I think he's been on the defensive over that issue, and whether or not he supports Israel strongly or he's trying to put distance between himself and Israel. Mitt Romney hit those points. President Obama went first and tried to preempt those points. The issue here is whether Republicans can get, or Mitt Romney can get, between 25 and 30% of the Jewish vote. What's fascinating, if Republicans lose the Jewish vote 4-1, it's a big setback. If they lose it 3-1, it's a huge victory.
Right. These little things make it. I think you're right. It's like everything matters now. Everything
we're going
matters.
down to you know, the margins of count now, because the big picture is not going to change between now and Election Day.
Exactly. James Carville, Ari Fleischer, thanks. Anderson, I think it's back to you.
Candy, thanks very much. It is fascinating just having watched the president these last two debates. It just makes you wonder all the more about that first debate. Just what happened? I mean, where was the president in that first debate, given the kind of radical change in the second and third ones?
I think he was sitting on a lead. I mean, he was sort of risk averse. He was ahead in the polls, and he didn't want to, he didn't want to take any chances. And so he was kind of absent. So he came out swinging, and he came out swinging again tonight. And I think it worked for him. But he also tried to make the point that Mitt Romney was reckless, was a phrase he used. And what Mitt Romney, the trap he did not walk into this evening, was to appear bellicose, reckless on foreign policy. And I think they were very, very careful about that, because this country doesn't want to go to war again. And he was trying to appeal to that tiny little slice of voters who are out there who are still undecided.
But there's some people who will see our poll results and say, look, that poll just seems skewed. The president seemed to, they say the president won the debate, and yet it didn't really seem to change anybody's vote.
And we should be careful about all these polls. These are polls just of debate watchers, and as Wolf noted, we've had more Republicans seem to be watching the debate. So this is not like a poll of all Americans. Wait 48, 72 hours. You'll get a sense of whether this changes the fundamentals in the race. Now, but if you take our polls for what they're worth, the president won. By debate viewers scored him as the winner of the last two debates. He may wish that he had won the first debate, because that is the one, at least so far. We'll see if it happens with this one. The first one changed the fundamentals of the race. He was on a path to win at that point, and Governor Romney was the issue in the campaign. After the first debate, the incumbent president became the issue in the campaign. And if the election were today, the president would probably get a narrow victory. But after 3 debates, the trend line is moving Governor Romney's way. In all 9 toss-up states, Governor Romney was in a stronger position this morning than he was the day before the first debate. And we have 2 weeks to election. Now, the movement Romney's way is now slowed, but it's still moving Romney's way. If it keeps moving Romney's way, even at the slow pace it is right now, he will be the next president of the United States.
Is there any possibility of changing that on the national? I mean, this debate was one clear way, but now they're going state by state.
Right. Yeah, but I think what's really interesting, we've all talked about the first debate. The second debate, the president clearly won, and yet people came out saying Romney would do a better job handling the economy. Tonight, the president won again, and yet I think the polls suggest, given the composition of the poll, I think the poll clearly suggests that Romney came out passing the commander-in-chief test. What is also striking, though, is that neither the second nor the third debate has, in the early hours at least, seemed to change the race. Our own poll, again, taking into account the composition, suggests it hasn't changed very much. Then, earlier tonight, said in trade spiked up to 80. There was an 80% chance of Obama winning. I would point out that before the debate, in trade was at 60 for Obama. It spiked, and then it ended up the night at 61. It basically no change.
Fareed?
Well, I wonder whether if you're looking for change, and these are all small issues because the race is so evenly divided. The most important thing that may have happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks is that housing in America has begun to